Welcome back to Sounds of the Unknown. Today, we're diving into a story that has circulated for years among those who have experienced the unexplained, an encounter with what's known as the Hat Man. This shadowy figure has been reported by people across continents, spanning cultures and generations, each describing the same tall, dark figure with an old-fashioned, wide-brimmed hat, who silently watches them in the dead of night. Many believe he's just a legend, a figment of imagination, or even a sleep paralysis demon. But what happens when multiple generations of a family experience the same dark presence, seeing him in the exact same place? Today's story is a first-hand account, shared by someone we'll call Alex, who encountered the Hat Man as a child and learned that he was not the only one in the family to come face to face with this chilling entity. Sit back, listen closely, and let's step into this spine-chilling experience. It was the summer of 1998, and I was 12 years old, spending my vacation at my grandmother's house, deep in the countryside. Her house was an old two-story building that creaked and groaned with every step. Built in the early 1900s, it was filled with an air of timelessness. Like every wall and floorboard carried the weight of countless memories. The atmosphere was heavy, quiet, and at night, downright unsettling. But as a kid, I didn't mind. My grandmother's house had always felt like a kind of adventure. One night, it was around 2 in the morning. I woke up with a strange sense that I wasn't alone. The air felt colder, and a faint sound drifted into my ears, a soft, rhythmic creaking that seemed to be coming from somewhere outside my room. It sounded like footsteps, slow and deliberate, moving through the hallway. At first, I thought it might be my grandmother, but her bedroom was right next to mine, and I'd never heard her walk around the house at night. Curiosity mixed with fear as I slowly slid out of bed and tiptoed to the door. I opened it just a crack and peeked into the dimly lit hallway. That's when I saw it. There, at the top of the staircase leading down to the first floor, stood a tall, dark figure. He was over 6 feet tall, shrouded in darkness, wearing a long black coat that seemed to absorb the faint light around him. But what struck me most was the hat, a wide-brimmed, old-fashioned hat that gave his shadowy form an even more unsettling look. His face was obscured in shadow, but I could feel his gaze fixed directly on me. I was frozen in place. His presence was heavy, suffocating, and I felt a chill spread over me that I had never felt before. He didn't move. He didn't make a sound. He just stood there, watching me. I don't know how long we stared at each other. Time felt stretched, and each second seemed to drag on like an eternity. I wanted to scream, but I was paralyzed with fear, unable to move or even blink. Finally, something inside me broke the spell. I shut the door, raced back to my bed, and hid under the covers, trying to convince myself that I was just imagining things, that I was dreaming. But I couldn't shake the feeling that what I had seen was real, that he was still there, standing in the hallway, just outside my door. The next morning, as soon as the sun came up, I decided to tell my grandmother. I didn't know how she would react, but I felt I had to tell someone. When I described what I'd seen, the tall figure, the black coat, the old-fashioned hat, she went pale. She didn't laugh it off, didn't tell me I was dreaming. Instead, she sat quietly for a moment, her expression shifting from shock to something like resignation. "You saw him too, didn't you?" she finally said, her voice barely above a whisper. My heart skipped a beat. 2. She explained that she had seen the same figure multiple times over the years. Ever since she was young, she would occasionally wake up to find him standing at the top of the stairs, in the exact same spot where I had seen him, always silent, always watching, never moving closer, but never turning away either. She called him the man with the hat, and admitted that she had tried for years to pretend he wasn't real, to convince herself that it was just a trick of the light or her mind playing games. But after my experience, she couldn't deny it any longer. Over the years, I learned that my grandmother wasn't the only one in our family who had encountered him. Her sister, who had grown up in the same house, had also seen him, describing him the exact same way. A tall, shadowy figure with a wide-brimmed hat and a coat, always appearing at the top of the stairs in the dead of night, just watching, never speaking. It was as if he was bound to that spot, silently observing everyone who dared look his way. As I grew older, I tried to rationalize what I had seen. I considered the possibility of sleep paralysis, but I wasn't sleeping when I saw him. I was wide awake, and so were my grandmother and her sister. Some people think he might be a ghost, an echo of someone from the house's past, perhaps a former resident or someone who had left a piece of themselves behind. Others believe he's something darker, a malevolent entity that attaches itself to certain places or even families. To this day, I don't know what the Hat Man truly is. After that summer, I refused to spend another night in that house. My grandmother eventually moved out a few years later, but I'll never forget the look on her face when I described that figure to her. The mix of fear and acceptance that told me she had come to terms with living alongside something she could neither explain nor escape. Every so often, when I'm alone and the house is silent, I think I catch a glimpse of that tall, dark figure in the shadows, a flash of a hat, a brief sense of being watched. I try to brush it off, tell myself it's just my mind playing tricks. But the memory of that night in my grandmother's house has stayed with me, a lingering feeling that somewhere, somehow, the Hat Man is still watching. Thanks for tuning in to Sounds of the Unknown. This was a first-hand account from Alex, who, along with his family, has experienced the eerie presence of the Hat Man, a mysterious figure that many believe exists beyond the realm of our understanding. If you've had a similar encounter or know someone who has, we'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on more real-life horror stories and unexplained phenomena. Until next time, stay curious and keep listening to the sounds of the unknown.